Welcome to episode 28 of Beer with Strangers. I'm your host, Tony Russo, and
Doug Griffith, Xtreme Brewing Supplies. Good morning.
Good morning. And I don't know if anybody's here just yet. We wanted to do this one by ourselves without making too much of a big deal about it because we want to see how it looks and how it goes. So, with any luck, we will be back next Thursday at 5-ish. And we'll get, if you're interested in being invited, just click on like the Beer with Strangers. Like the State of the Beer page on Google+, and then you can get an email and be invited to our regular show. And if you'd like to be a guest, of course, please feel free to chime in. We'll put up the Q&A bar if anybody requests it.
And any beer-related topic, glad to talk about.
Always happy to talk about. So this week we're going to catch up because we've been off for about 2 weeks. We had technical difficulties and scheduling conflicts and
back with new technology.
And now we've got new tech. We used to be an audio podcast, and you can still find that at stateofthebeer.com or beerwithstrangers.com or xtremebrewing.com, either with an X or with an EX. All of those ways.
And you'll find it on our website under the Everything Else tab. So glad to have you on board to watch us and talk about it.
Right, we've been trying to interview brewers and talk about beer news, and so that's what we are here to do today. Be about half an hour, and again, happy to take any questions, requests, things like that. So first, let's catch up because I haven't seen you in weeks. So
I know.
How you been?
Been fine, been good. Had last week off for a nice little bit of R&R away from the place. So and back. Now this week, working on a box or a walk-in box out back for storing different cold things, specifically our wine juices that will be coming in next month.
Oh, that's right. It is wine season, and there's all sorts of. Hey.
Right. These are California and Italian wines, juices that we get in for people to go and take and ferment themselves at home. So
now, I just tried something yesterday. It was a fermented tea. And I don't know what it's called. Kum chai. You know what I'm talking about?
I've heard of it, but I've never had it. So
yeah, it tastes like vinegar gone bad. It tastes like apple cider that's just about to go over. Yeah. But I don't know if there was alcohol in it or not. I mean, I generally don't care.
It's just tea itself that you put in water, right, and extract the essence out. So there is no alcohol because it's been dried.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure that's the process from what I remember reading about. They take the tea leaves or whatever they're using for that and goes through a somewhat fermentation, which gives it that astringent flavors.
But no alcohol. Takes out all the sugar. It doesn't leave any alcohol.
I'm not sure there's any sugars in there to begin with. They just use something to enhance the flavor of it, and it may be a natural, just like sauerkraut. It happens naturally. It's fermentation, but it's salted down, and there's a process it's called a fermentation, but it's not in the fermentation of beer. Mm-hmm. It's some bacteria activity or that causes those good flavors, bad flavors, whatever you want to call them flavors, but it changes the flavor of the tea to something different.
I mean, I can see it's something that a person could get accustomed to. It wasn't awful. I wasn't like, oh, I need to have more of this right away.
A lot of those things. I mean, it's like probably the first time you taste it, going back to sauerkraut.
Yeah.
It's got and it depends upon who's done it as to how sour it actually is. Mm-hmm. But it's a way to preserve things, and the longer you let it sit with its fermentation or on the salt, it gets stronger and stronger. So and a part of that's all what you're accustomed to.
And then, so did you get to try any beers while you were out? Did you go on any beer adventures?
No, none at all. It was strictly my sister rented a place at Lake Gaston on the North Carolina side, and it was strictly just sit and chill out. Although we played cornhole and had plenty of drinks and good things to eat. Went out one night for dinner for my sister's birthday. Mm-hmm. But other than that, it was just strictly sit and do almost nothing. I mean, you could go fish if you wanted to. My brother-in-law had a ski-doo, which you go out ride, but we just decided to sit there on the dock and chill out.
Yeah, we read here too often at the beach about people who have terrible things happen to them when they get on those.
Well, it's not bad. It's a regular boat. It's a 4-person.
Oh, I thought you meant it was like a.
No, well, but that's what he used to, and he's upgraded now to something that can hold 4 people. And we were down 2 years ago when he first got it, and we did go out for 2 or 3 hours and just rode around the lake. But this time it's just decompress and just do not much. Read a lot and enjoy life.
Very cool. Well, I've been busy myself. We've been I finished up I didn't finish up my book, but I finished up all the photos for my book. And stay tuned. We're going to be starting up the beer with the State of the Beer blog again as I get closer to the Eastern Shore Beer book, which will be coming out. And as part of that, I recently interviewed Alan Pugsley, who's a big name in craft brewing. Do you know about him?
Yes, I do know about him, and I know that he installed when Wild Goose had their place in Cambridge. He installed the system there. Now they've been out of business 15 years now.
Yeah, 98. Yeah. So almost 20. Yeah.
But I know he was installing brewing systems back in the 90s, and they had one, or I guess the 80s actually, when he one there. But I've never met him. But was a big name, or is a big name in craft brewing.
Right. He left England as and to come here and to do some brewing. One of the stories that's not going to make the book, so I thought it'd be fun to tell, is the reason that Wild Goose was in Cambridge is because because the investors were hard-hitting, like high-powered people in Washington D.C., like members of the Ford administration and stuff like that. And they were down in Aruba, and Exxon had this big oil refinery, one of the largest oil refineries in the hemisphere, on Aruba, and it had closed it down. And there were a lot of inexpensive buildings, and these guys used to go to Aruba for like vacations and stuff, and they had the opportunity to have this. They said, "Yeah, let's put a brewery in one of these old refinery buildings." So they flew Alan down to build them a brewery, and he spent a couple weeks putting the brewery together, like laying it out and stuff like that. They had a meeting with the Prime Minister and did all the Prime Minister meetings, stuff like that. There was an election, and that Prime Minister lost, and then all of a sudden there was this huge excise tax on any companies who wanted to open breweries on Aruba. and so they got kicked off, and well, they didn't get kicked off. They're like, well, we're not paying that. And so but now they have the taste of let's have a brewery in their mouths. So they came back here and they started Wild Goose.
Oh, wow, okay.
Instead, lots of fun stories about Wild Goose. One of the interesting ones was malt at the time. Do you remember? Were you brewing yet in the late 90s?
Yes, we were. We started about 95. So, but I knew Wild Goose because of Sam Calagione going there and getting some advice from the brewer at the time. There was Jason Kennedy, and I know he was he was helping some, and I think he talked to the owner, which I can't remember. You talked to him.
Jim Lutz.
Yeah, Jim Lutz.
Who's at Old Dominion now.
About some of the legalities, and I think he helped him with a little bit of stuff, just advice-wise. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I remember going over there with Sam at the time, and of course, Sam from the beers while we were there.
Right, yeah. Well, one of the things he told me was that the malt would only come in 50-pound bags at the time.
Right, I remember that. They had to get everything and load it into a hopper or the mill, and then it was fed up into the mash tun. Right, and
not only was it all by hand, but they had a 25-barrel system there at the time. So starting with it, they would have, he said, 40,000 pounds of grain in a big pile in the middle of the room, because there was no plan for how to deal with that much grain. They were really just making it all up as they went along. And he told me some of the story, and I'd like to tell you this story because I'd like to put it in the book, but I don't know if I understand it. He was literally running the whole show by himself. So he would start the mash and then go mess with the bottles and then the labeler, and then he would have to get something else done before he filtered it. Does that sound right? You filter after the mash? I thought there was one other step.
Well, after the mash, you're going to ferment. I mean, it goes from the mash into the boil, and then the boil, chill it down, and then you ferment it. Bottling's way down the road. But
well, maybe he was doing last week's, yeah.
Yeah, that's always possible. But generally, you would ferment it, then chill it to get as much of the sediments to fall out, and then it would be filtered or put in a bright tank or somewhere between fermentation and bright tank. You probably filter it, then carbonate it, and then into the bottle.
Mm-hmm. So. When I told him that the brewery had not the brewery but the building had burned down, he said that's the best thing that could have happened.
There was a big old warehouse from what I remember.
Well, they built as he tells it, they built the fermentation room because they did the open top fermentation there. So they built that, but they didn't make the landlord wouldn't make any improvements, and the renters wouldn't make any improvements. And he said, so like you could see outside of the building, and they're like, well, it's Maryland, it doesn't get too cold. And then 1989 was one of the coldest winters on record, and he had been working in Maine for a couple of years, but he kept saying he would interrupt the story to say, it was bloody cold.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it can get down to 0 here.
Yeah.
Or below.
Yeah, and out there in Cambridge, if you're in one of those old buildings with no insulation, and that's what he said. He's like, I was working in Maine, but at least in Maine, they're used to it being cold, so they put in things like insulation and seal the building. He said you could look through the cracks and you could see blue sky from inside the brewery. But it was fun. It was a nice conversation that I got to have with him, and I'm looking very forward to getting the book out and done, and then moving on with our next big fun project.
That's good. So you are progressing well with all your research on Maryland.
Yes.
Maryland beer history.
Yes.
The Eastern Shore Maryland beer history.
Right. The only thing that I'm missing is I'd like to go to Philadelphia again. I got a letter from a librarian in Philadelphia who has some books that he thinks I would like to see.
Oh, okay.
But unfortunately, they're in Philadelphia, and it's not the kind of thing where I can say, hey, just send me the books. They're books from the 1700s, so I have to go and put on the gloves and everything. So the question
then shipped to one of the local libraries?
No. This is a private collection.
Oh, okay.
It's a public-private collection. The next time you're in Philadelphia and you're bored, kids, there's the People's Library, the Library Company of Philadelphia. It was founded by Benjamin Franklin as a public-private library. It's privately owned, privately run, foundation. But anybody can use this stuff. You just have to follow the rules. So,
which means generally you can't take anything out.
Definitely, it's not a lending library at all. But they have some stuff, and I spoke with the publisher, and I spoke with Ed, and I may or may not make an effort to get that in the book. I think I'm going to write the book first because it's due on August 22nd. And then if I have time, if I can get it done by the 18th, I have to take my daughter back to Wilmington on the 19th, so then I'll spend the 20th doing research in the library, and we'll see if it works out or not. But all sorts of fun stuff, and we'll break that to you as it comes along. And I noticed outside you had some sign-up sheets. That was the other thing I thought we could talk about today.
Well, yeah, we always get occasional requests for a class, whether it be beer or wine. So we put a sign-up sheet down, and if we can get 4 or more people together at the same time, we'll be glad to give a class. Mm-hmm. A lot of times people inquire, and we say no, nothing at this time, so we're trying to be more proactive and have a sign-up sheet. So even though we don't have a specific class set, sign up, and then we'll let you know when something is available. Mm-hmm. Although Patty and I are working on setting something up for starting in September, our normal class schedule for both beer and wine. So we'll have it here as well as in Millsboro and Lewis. So, but as soon as we get that set, we'll get it out on the website.
Very cool. And just for those of you who may have missed it, we do they do here at Xtreme Brewing. They do regular classes. It's a homebrew shop, so they sell things. And because this is our first time on live on the internet, do you want to plug some of the Dogfish stuff that you sell because you sell the kits?
Well, I was very much involved with Dogfish in the early days. For those people who may not know us or know me, did probably the first 3 years at the restaurant, and then helped put in the brewing system there. And then when they opened the brewery out at Nassau Valley, helped there for 2 years, get things going. But it was a lot of fun initially, and still have a relationship with Sam. We did the Xtreme Brewing book. I did all the editing on it, both the first edition and second edition. We've got 7 recipes of our kits in that second edition book. We have still have all of those, plus most of the recipes that were in the original book of recipes that Sam had come up with, plus some of the things they're still doing. Indian Brown, 60-minute, got 90-minute IPA, and I can't think of anything else that they, Raison d'Etre we have. But we have a lot of the original recipes that Sam started with at the restaurant way back in 1995, which he put in that book. So
that's cool. And do you know if the recipes have changed? It's like if these are like old-timey recipes that have...
These are old-time recipes, and may not be true to what they're brewing today, but they were what they were brewing at the time of the book.
That's cool. Yeah, that's as someone
I think some of these actually are just personal opinion. I think some of them taste better than what the current does, but they've changed breweries, they've changed brewing systems, they've changed
water.
Some of the hops may change because of not having quantities available to what they're doing these days. So things have changed, and necessary changes. But they still taste very good. So it's just a different beer than what it was 7 years ago when the book first came out. So
right. One of the other things that I thought it would be fun to talk about a little bit is that it is wine season coming up. So if people are interested in getting into wine, you can start cold here. And
yes, and we'll give classes on, as I said, on wine making. We do generally just a beginner's wine class, but we go through making fruit wines. We call them bucket juices. It's things that are shipped in either from California or Italy this time in the fall, or Chile in the spring. So we have those juices available, both reds and whites, and it's about 10 different varieties, or I guess of each, red and white, more on the red side, but we've got 20-some different varieties of juices that we can get for people to make their own wine. Plus we've got our standard list of kit wines that you can get any time of year. So,
and now, but the juices, you were saying in the spring when we talked about it, the juices, they don't necessarily make. Do they make better wine, or do people just like them better? Or because these are the actual juices from the.
These are actually, I think the kits make, especially the top of the line kits, the Eclipse series, makes better wine because they come from notable grape growing areas. Plus, a lot of the newer kits have skins with them, which really enhance, especially the reds. But the reds do have, looks more like a jam. It's all been put into a bag, but it looks like a jam that you add to a sock inside the fermenter, and it pulls out some of those extra flavors that you can't get anyway. It's just kept through fermentation. The juices are, I mean, the grapes are taken off the vine, they squeeze them, put them with the skins for a period of time, but it's not a true fermentation. They're pulling out the flavors and the colors just through contact with the juice. But for fermentation, it pulls other things out that you don't get with just sitting there by itself. So the flavors are more intense, I believe, for a lot of the reds that do come, or for all the reds that do come with the skins. But the price for the buckets is very economical when you compare it. You get 6 gallons, which is roughly 30 bottles of wine, and they run somewhere between $70 to $80 generally. Some of our better kits run up into $130, so it's almost double the price. But it's a good place to start with the bucket juices.
Right. Yeah.
And you can make either reds or whites, and they're good, just good table wine.
Excellent. And just because we have a couple more minutes left. You also recently have added cheeses and teas, and are you adding coffee as well? It's like if you
coffee, tea, cheese, and distilling.
Oh, distilling for
right.
essence of oils.
We've always had the distillers yeast plus a lot of the turbo yeast, they call it, to create 20 or 21% alcohol. But just recently we've added distillation equipment because we're getting a lot of people in request or asking about what we have as far as equipment for distillation. So we've just added that within the last month.
Mm-hmm.
So coffee, tea, beer, wine, cheese, and distilling.
Start here, right?
So,
you start here and you won't go hungry 6 months
all kinds
from
of
now.
things you can drink, plus the cheese. So
that is awesome. Well, we're gonna call it a day for now. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you hopefully. Oh, we didn't get a weather report.
no, I did not. It's a beautiful day here on Delmarva. About 83 outside when I looked. Supposed to be in the upper 80s today. Clear, no rain. So it's another wonderful day here on Delmarva.
That's awesome. So, like I said, next week probably 5 o'clock-ish. We can send you an invitation if you'd like one. We answer questions. We would love to answer questions. Actually, he would love to. I would love to have him answer questions. I'm not going to answer any questions for you, except why did you choose that shirt? And actually, my wife picks out my clothes. I'm like a 4-year-old. But anyway,
Get a little close up here.
Extreme Brewing shirt. Yeah. So all sorts of gear. So you can visit xtremebrewing.com, and that's the cartoon version of Doug. You can visit xtremebrewing.com whenever you'd like. Feel free to Q&A in on us next week, right about 5 p.m. or so, between 5 and 5:10. We'll try to get started on time, and let us know what you think in the comments below. This is my first YouTube thing, so I understand I'm supposed to say let us know what you think in the comments below. I'm not going to know how this sounds until I put it on. I chose to go without covering the microphone. I don't know how that's going to go, so maybe we'll cover it next week. But other than that, thanks.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.